You're watching the Eagle Time podcast, episode 13 with Educator of the Year nominee, Miss Tejada.
That's the Eagle call. You heard it. That's the Eagle call. That's the Eagle call.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to our podcast. I'm Audrey.
I'm Alexis.
I'm Christopher.
I'm Robert.
And you're watching Eagle Time, a student-run podcast from Rodriguez Prep Academy coming to you from the beautiful, sunny San Bernardino, California. For today's episode, we have a special guest. She was nominated Teacher of the Year. Her name is Miss Tejada.
Miss Tejada is an outstanding ELA teacher who cares a lot about her students. Miss Tejada is such a great teacher that she even takes new student teachers under her wing to help inspire new teachers for generations to come.
Ms. Tejada has been teaching at RPA for over 5 years. She's taught many different grade levels and inspired all of her students while doing a flawless job of teaching them. This is why she was nominated as Teacher of the Year in San Bernardino 2024.
Ms. Tejada is one of those teachers that you can just rely on and look up to. That is one of the many reasons she was nominated for Teacher of the Year. She's an amazing teacher. Ms. Tejada spends so much time just to help or make assignments for students and knows just what to say to them when they are having a bad day.
So now let's welcome to our podcast, Miss Tejada.
Hello.
So we heard that you were nominated as Teacher of the Year. How do you feel about that?
Honestly, I was really surprised. I remember being in my class. It was period 6. Announcements were going, and then out of nowhere, I heard an Educator of the Year nominee, Miss. And I was thinking about all these other amazing teachers we have on campus. I'm like, oh, they're definitely going to get it. And I heard Miss Tejada, and, I was just really shocked because being at the site that we are, I see the work that other teachers do, and to even be considered, it was really heartwarming for sure.
What motivated you to become a teacher in the first place?
So originally when I was at Cal State San Bernardino, I had the intention of being a journalist, and I got pretty far into my studies. I think I was like a junior, and I was really contemplating, like, do I want to, make a change in my, career path? When I was at my university at Cal State San Bernardino, I was able to work at our school's newspaper, Candid Chronicle. I originally started off as an arts and entertainment editor, and then made my way to the executive editor role. During these positions, I was able to work with adults and support them in their writing. And I realized that was one of my favorite things about being an editor for my school. And then I started working at Curtis Middle School as a student intern. So this was when I was still my undergraduate. And I appreciated working with the middle school students. And then something just told me that I think my path is in education, or my journey is in education. So I changed my major within, a few weeks of being at Curtis Middle School, from communications to English literature, and yeah.
So on the topic of teaching kids, what has been your favorite group of kids to teach? I have 6th and 7th graders.
I have not taught 6th grade. Maybe one day I hope to just get, a little bit of experience everywhere. But I have taught 7th and 8th grade. And that is really hard, just because there's something special about teaching 7th graders, but there's also something very special about teaching 8th graders. So for the longest, when I first started working as a teacher, I started off 7th grade, and I really appreciated the idea of seeing them again next year, and being able to monitor some of that progress, talking to the 8th grade teachers just to see how they're doing. But then when I was, working with my 8th graders, knowing that this was kind of the last chance to really make that impact, make that difference before we release you guys, into high school, that also felt very special. So I don't think I have a favorite group. I think they're just very different experiences.
Yeah, what are some teaching strategies you like to employ with your students?
Kids, I was kidding. Let me see. teaching strategies. So I really like to, just look at data in general, think about where they need to go, where they're at, and then making these adjustments as they go. I really appreciate PBIS. Think that doesn't always come natural to give people praise for all the hard work that they do. We just kind of appreciate people, but we don't always vocalize it. So I think that has been my favorite strategy, is letting students know, giving them that feedback on how great they're doing. And then also mixing in some of this is what we can improve on. So students gain that confidence.
Speak on the topic of creating that confidence in students. I know that a lot of teachers, like Mr. Chihio we had on the podcast, like to create bonds with their students. Do you like to do that?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to learning, a big part is what kind of relationships are we building with our students? Thinking back to when I was a student, the times where I really shined and moments where I kind of struggled, I think that what really made the difference is how do I feel in the classroom? Do I feel like I'm cared for as an overall student? And, when we are younger, I think we just really just need that validation or that sense of belonging for us to buy into going in the classroom.
Speaking of students at schools, in other words, what made you want to come to this school specifically?
Okay, so to this school specifically. So I had heard of Rodriguez Prep. I was in middle school myself when this school first opened. And I just really like the idea of how, STEM-focused it was. But also part of it was the leadership at our site. So when I was at Curtis Middle School, I was offered a position, but then, a different teacher had to go in just because I was not done with my credential program. I couldn't accept that. And then at the time we had Mrs. Holomariam and Dr. Clyde, who they were working here as principal and vice principal. And I had the pleasure of working with Holomariam at Curtis Middle School. She was an English teacher before she became vice principal here. And just observing, how she ran her classroom with so much grace and just being so meticulous of what she included in her lessons and everything. I just felt like even as a student intern, I learned so much from her. Knowing that she was vice principal here, I knew that she was going to be able to just help further my abilities as a teacher. So I just had a lot of trust, I think. And, eventually, I came here and I feel that this site really, really helped me grow as a teacher, because when I started here, I was not done with my credential program. I had just started my credential program.
So RPA helped you out a lot.
RPA helped me. And then, you build the bonds with the students. I get to know you guys. We spend a lot of days in the classroom, and I think it was an easy decision for me to continue here.
Well, what type of model do you like to use inside of the classroom and outside of the classroom?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
The model, like a saying that you like to use, inside.
So the motto, sorry. One that I use in the classroom is when students are complaining. I think that that's one of my biggest moments where I don't have a lot of patience with complaining. So whenever my students are complaining about the work, part of it is when I see how capable they are. And I feel that sometimes we really restrict ourselves when we complain, right? So I tell my students that if we have time to complain, we got time to do more work. And it might mean like doing an extra sentence here or there. But usually at the beginning of the year, I do have a lot of complaining that goes on. But by the, end of the second month, I don't really hear complaining in my class. And that's my favorite motto.
Melissa, what about for yourself? What do you tell yourself?
So I honestly, it's me reminding myself why I'm here, right? So whenever, if I'm having a moment where it's like, what am I doing? I remind myself, I'm here for the kids. I'm here for the kids. I'm here for the kids, right? So that's my favorite motto is I'm here for the kids, right? It's good to center, like whenever, things get a little complicated or I'm doing all these extra stuff, is just reminding myself of like these connections I have built with my students, but also I just really feel that, I've worked to create a specific type of culture in the classroom where I feel very positive in there. So.
Yeah, this is just a little hypothetical, but um, what was your favorite group of students like last year, seventh grade, fifth to sixth period? Uh, just a little hypothetical.
You know what? I really, really appreciated seventh period. It was my conference period because it gave me that time to reflect on how amazing all my classes were, but also to do get some grading done and be able to make some edits, revisions to my lessons.
Well, we know that you told your students that you were a flawless student in middle school.
Yeah.
Who or what helped you do that?
Man, so I think there was a few people. So, when I first started middle school, I was a straight A student. I was about it. And then, after a while, I really didn't feel, I guess, the motivation during my eighth grade year. I think there was like a lot going on, outside of school that was impacting how I viewed school. And so I was able to somehow go under the radar where not many people really talked to me about my grades. And I worked really hard to hide the report card from my parents. And they didn't really know how to work Aries. So it was, kind of the perfect situation at the time. So I worked really hard just to keep up the whole story that I'm doing okay. Eventually, as most things go, I got caught. So it was when I was entering high school. I was at San Bernardino High School, and before the school year started, I met with the school counselor and my dad. So my dad is scary. He's a very, very strict guy. So I really had to own up to what happened my eighth grade year, right? So I sat down, and the first thing the counselor tells me is, I'm very, very concerned for you. And I was, it didn't hit at the moment. I didn't really know what he meant. I was like, what do you mean? I'm great. I'm doing good. Because I was also very involved in school in different ways, just not academically, I guess. But I was like in clubs and things like that. I was like, so what do you mean? And then, he showed the grades to my dad, and my dad looked at me, and my dad is a very, very sweet man, but also very tough. He's always been about academics, especially with their upbringing of not being able to have the same opportunities. So we talked about that a little bit, and he told me, I'm concerned that if you don't make the changes now, I don't know what your life is going to look like 5 years from now, right? And my dad just looked at me, very, very intensely. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be a really fun drive back home. So I was in the car, and usually my dad, he always has the words to say, he's very talkative. I think he runs in the family. But all he said was, I don't know what to say. I'm very disappointed. And he didn't say anything. So it was honestly, we only lived at the time, 10 minutes away from the house, but it felt like an hour drive. So, he was very quiet. And then he just reminded me me and your mom, we don't have a lot that we can offer financially, but we've always made a priority to, for you guys to focus on your school. My parents migrated from El Salvador in the 80s during the Civil War. And he kind of reminded me of that. And just the violence that they escaped, just for me and my siblings to have a good life. And I think it was a moment of reflection where I'm like, dang, hearing someone say that they're disappointed, especially someone you really love and respect, it does have, it affects you. It's different than just being mad, because he wasn't mad. He was disappointed. So it kind of hit me. And just really thinking about the, my parents, they worked cleaning houses, and I would help them after school. So seeing that was, what they had to do to provide for me and my siblings, them having to leave their countries, not seeing their parents for many, many years. I think I had to really think about the sacrifices my parents made, think about what I'm doing. And I think I just felt really kind of ashamed. But also, I think going back to school, I had a lot of teachers who kind of checked in on me. The counselor, he checked in on me a few times. And I think that's why I was really successful my high school year, is because, they were seeing where I was at, and they just made sure to provide more of those supports. So it was a lot of teachers. My parents were one of my siblings, and yeah.
Those moments still linger in your mind sometimes?
Yes. I think especially in the classroom, when I see a student, because I see it in you guys, I see that, I see students who remind me so much of me. Kids who are obviously super smart, and it shows in one way or another, but they don't do the work. And, I've had conversations with some of these students, and they talk about, what their parents want from them and what even they want for themselves, and it doesn't match up. And I think whenever I see students struggling, I think about that situation. And I think that's what pushes me to not just let it go. Because technically, you could just let it go. If I give you a D or an F, I could let it go. But I actually cannot let it go because I do think about those situations where I hope that I could say the right things. And I hope I say the right things to kind of get students to realize that, this is a very, very important step for you guys to live a abundant life.
Was anyone that really helped you in your past with anything?
With anything, think I really think about my siblings specifically. We had a very close relationship, with kind of the having to deal with balancing school, taking care of each other, and having to help our parents with the work. I think my siblings, because even now, we still check up on each other. We don't see each other every day necessarily, but I think that we just have this bond where we uplift each other. I mean, we're still siblings, so it's siblings, but I think that I just generally feel like they have helped me and guided me to my path. For example, my older brother, he's also a teacher. I work with him, at Curtis. And when I had tough days, when I was trying to figure out what teaching was going to look like for me, I remember him just really hearing me out, giving me advice, and just really, really taking that time. But I think a lot of people have mentored me and helped me in general through this.
Yeah. Who was your role model when you were a kid or even today? And what kind of role model do you want to be?
Okay. Oh, that's such a good question. A role model, I think I'm going to have to go back. You know what? I went to my parents, but I think someone else who stood out specifically as a teacher. I have my godmother, my Tejada. She was an elementary teacher. She taught kinder for many, many years. And, most of my family, they came from, poverty. They were not able to afford to go to school. For example, even my mom, she had a third grade education, because they had to pay. So my godmother, she was the first adult in my family to go to college. She graduated from Cal State San Bernardino. It's just kind of seeing her, story of an immigrant. She migrated from Mexico, and then going to school, finishing that, having kids, still going to Cal State San Bernardino, and just seeing how she was just so resilient, and she is so resilient. I think that she is my role model, and I think that even now she still inspires me. It's even through these hard times, you could accomplish so much. It's going to be hard, and sometimes you're going to not want to do it, but it's just her ability to work through struggles. So, yeah.
Well, are you planning on trying to get a higher position like principal or even at a university?
I would consider doing part-time at a university. I think where I'm at right now, and I'm still figuring it out, we're experiencing life, but as of right now, I just really, really appreciate what I'm learning as a teacher. And if that's where life takes me, I will keep an open mind. But I think for right now, being a teacher is good. But I'm going to try out for demo, so we'll see. But also be teaching.
How do you lead ASB, through the field trips or dances?
With a lot of support and grace. Going into ASB, I think that there was a few things that were going on, but a lot of it was trying to figure out, asking questions. I think a lot of, I've had a lot of support in figuring these things out. And I'm still figuring it out. But I think it's my students, really, my leadership students. It's being in leadership, it's more than just being in the class. You really have to be putting in that work. So we think about, okay, what spirit days do we want? What kind of fundraisers can we, really profit from? And what do we want that merit trip to look like at the end of the year? So I do give my students that opportunity to share, because at the end of the day, you guys are the students, right? So they are the voice of the student. And I could just do it all by myself, but it's not really, that's not how ASB works, right? It shouldn't be what does Ms. Tejada want to do for fun? It's what do the students want? So by giving my students that ability to provide a lot of feedback and really, they run a lot of the, ASB meetings, most of the ASB meetings. I think that that's what's really helped. It feels like just very collaborative. So me doing ASB, it's not just me, it's students, right? It's my president, my vice president, my treasurer, but also just every student who's enrolled, and even students outside of leadership. We hear your feedback. Sometimes you guys talk to me during passing period or before school, after school, and just hearing out hearing what you're saying. I think that's what's helped me handle ASB.
So, when you see the students, laughing and having fun based on the events you planned, how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel like it's worth it, because being in ASB, it's not for the fun. It takes a lot of time. So, for example, today I'm going to stay here till 4:30, making sure we have our grams ready, and students are also staying here, right? So it means sometimes having to say no to some, events like for family. It means staying up late, finishing some edits real quick, or, really getting things ready for the next day. Or it means sometimes getting to school much earlier than, I would like 6 a.m. early sometimes. And when I see that a kid is enjoying it, even if I hear maybe one comment where it's like, I didn't enjoy this was trash, whatever it is, I think it just makes it feel like, yeah, that's worth it. They're enjoying themselves, because that is the goal for ASB.
I think you would have benefited from ASB if you were in 8th grade and you were part of it.
Yeah, I think I would have. I think I didn't see the button that year. But also there was other things kind of going on. So like I mentioned, I worked with my parents' help clean houses. So I think my mind was just everywhere. I also really, really stepped up to help with my younger sister. So I think I just had a lot going on. But I think, I think it would have helped, just that idea of making it feel like this really inclusive, safe space.
So what you said before, whenever a student makes a comment, it makes you feel great. It's back to that quote that you said, that it's for the students.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the reminder. And that's what I was thinking about, when I wake up super, super early or go to sleep very late, I'm a little sleep deprived. It's it's for the students, because it honestly, it fuels my soul. It feels really good when I see that you guys are enjoying it. And even when you don't, I know that it's just feedback, so we can make it better next time.
Yeah. How do you handle being a teacher, just in general? How do you carry yourself?
So it's been practice. I think that when even when I first started my credential program, because I am very passionate. I love my job. Even when I'm tired, I still really, really appreciate what I'm doing. It's a privilege to be able to teach you guys. I think that when I first started, I felt that my life had to be 24/7 teaching, right? I had to teach myself, because this is what I tell my students as well. Because I see students kind of who are also similar to that mindset, where it's everything has to, I have to wake up super early and go to sleep early. And it's kind of harmful, that mentality. So I try to really, really balance my life out, right? So even when I go home, take my dog out on a walk, just to kind of clear my mind, because I really have to take care of myself as a person to show up for you guys. And that's a skill I want to teach my students too, right? Take care of yourself so you could show up for others, right? So I think being able to learn that balance has helped me as a teacher.
What made you choose ELA? What about math, science, history,
Okay, so here's kind of the funny thing, and I mentioned this to some of my students. So my first language is Spanish. So my mom, she only speaks Spanish, and she was really the one who taught us how to read, write. So going into kinder, I was put in bilingual classes. I always loved speaking in Spanish. My strongest subjects have always been math and science, or at least in grade school. Now it's definitely going to be ELA. And ELA was just so strong, because I'm there's no formula. How do I do this, right? Versus math, if you memorize a formula, you've got it. It just made sense. However, in like middle school, high school, I really gained this appreciation for literature in English when I was no longer in my bilingual classes. And even though it required me to work a little bit more, I think that's what I appreciate. It was never boring to me. Being able to analyze the text, break it down. I was able to take great pieces that I probably would not have understood the first time I read it, and just simplifying it. Like that was just an art in its own. And so I think when I got into teaching, I knew that, yeah, technically I could do math, but I think I was already in that path when I was doing journalism. And when I saw that struggle with adults having a hard time with writing at a 6th grade level, because that's what we do in journalism, I think that that was my calling is teaching people how to read and write.
Yeah, like what kind of philosophies did you use to read back then? Like when you were, like Kant and Socrates?
Yeah. Oh, so we did all of that. That was like a theory class that I took, but my focus was more on literature. So we looked at different cultures, right? So texts that were like culture, like for different cultures. We had different timepieces, like we read like Shakespeare, things like that. I think one of my favorite classes that I took was Black literature class, and then it was a Chicana literature class. I think it was one of my favorite.
Well, we know like that you've been teaching for 5 years. What are some things that you've improved in teaching over those 5 years?
Patience with myself, but also just kind of, reminding myself in tough situations. Because I've worked, at different sites, at different experiences. And sometimes when students are not understanding what I'm trying to be about, the first instinct is be kind of upset. But I think I've gotten better at asking questions, not just jumping to conclusions, not thinking, oh, a student just doesn't care, right? I think that's been something I've very, very much improved on.
Do you have a favorite book or like a book that's inspired you since you are an ELA teacher?
Yes. So I teach it. I think that the students and I probably like this book way too much, but The House on Mango Street, I just remember being in middle school, right? That was like the first English book I read that I felt I related to, thinking about Esperanza and like a house and just thinking of like where I was. So like economically with my family, I just resonated with a lot of the things that she was going through. And that was something that sparked my interest in reading in English. So I think it kind of just started everything for me. So that's my favorite book. And it's also the first book I teach in 7th grade. So that's my first unit.
Have you ever read Esperanza Rising?
I have, and it's still good, but House of Industry, that was like the first book I read in middle school that was, that really like spoke to me.
So like since you said you like The House on Mango Street, the author that came to our school, Reina Grande, recently?
Yes.
Have you ever read her books?
So I have not, but I did get a copy of the book and she signed it, and that's really what I'm going to do during winter is just read. Because as much as I've enjoyed reading, I think during the school year, I focus more on reading for the classroom, or I'll start reading a book, but then I'll get distracted with, ASB, not distracted, but I'll get occupied with doing other stuff and I have to put the book down. So that's going to be one of the books I read this winter.
So, for our final question, we like to leave things on a positive note. And what was one of your favorite moments of teaching that you would like to share with us?
I think I've had a lot of good moments. Just overall, like I think I'm pretty blessed with the job I have, and every year there are moments where I don't know, it just feels good. But I think there's one specific moment where, and this was like, kind of early on, 2023, I believe. This was 2nd year back from COVID. And my 8th graders, then 9th graders, they had gotten together and they made a happy birthday video for me. And I saw almost all of my 8th graders in that video because I taught 8th grade the year before. And just them putting in that effort, they were no longer at the same site doing this for me just to say happy birthday. I didn't even know they still knew my birthday. A lot of students, when they leave, go to high school, it's not that they forget about their teachers, but they kind of, their life continues and it's expected and it's understood. So for them, already end of that first semester of their 9th grade year to still remember me and just hearing all these beautiful things they said, that I, inspired them, that I made them love ELA, I made them love reading. Hearing that video a few months after I was done teaching them for 8th grade, I think that was a moment where it just kind of, I don't know, it just made me feel really, really good. And it was just a special moment for me.
Thank you for coming on our show, Miss Tejada.
Thank you for having me.
It was such an honor for having you here. Kazuya!
That's Eagle time.
It's Eagle time.
Nuh-uh.
That's Eagle time.
You asked one question.
Eagle time. You hear it? It's coming. Eagle time, eagle time, eagle time, eagle. Eagle time, 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 eagle. Eagle time, 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 eagle. Eagle time, 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 eagle. Eagle time, eagle time, eagle time, eagle time. Eagle time. You hear it? It's coming.
We are Eagles. Caw!